Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7 Israel News, and this program is Israel at War, an update. I am Amir Oren, sitting in for Jonathan Hessen, and with us are today two reserve brigadier generals in the Israeli Air Force, Doron Gavish, formerly the commander of the Israeli Air Force's air and missile defense, and currently, when on duty, the commanding officer of the Israeli Air Force's task force on air and missile defense. Welcome, General Gavish.
Welcome to you, and good day.
Good day to all of us. And Brigadier General in the Reserves, Yaron Rosen, formerly a senior Air Force officer commanding various units, as well as the commanding officer of the entire cyber staff of the IDF. General Rosen, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Now, this is the 328th day of the war, which started on October the 7th last year by the horrific assault and massacre perpetrated by Hamas coming out of Gaza, and lengthened, prolonged up to now by the participation of Hezbollah acting from Lebanon, the Houthis acting out of Yemen, various pro-Iranian militias, and at times, not only those militias acting out of Syria and Iraq, but also the Iranian regime itself in mid-April trying to hit Israel directly by launching more than 300 projectiles, be they drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and whatever they have in their arsenal. Generals, let me quote right now from another Brigadier General in the Reserves, Eran Ortal, who recently analyzed in the British website and magazine Jane's, which is known globally as specializing in military affairs. And General Ortal tries to analyze the various options that Israel has regarding its conflict with Hezbollah, whether it can still strike Hezbollah from the air, what would a ground invasion entail, and other such options. And his conclusion, based, of course, on many years of serving in the IDF and studying it, also teaching other officers, including general officers, those supposed to lead divisions and general staff departments. His conclusion is that Israel's best option is right now to disengage, which will mean disengaging from Gaza, having a hostage deal and ceasefire, which will also bring about a ceasefire in the north and diplomatic negotiations, and prepare for the next 3 years, devote the next 3 years for building the right force, tailor-made, for the inevitable war with Hezbollah, because eventually the IDF will have to fight Hezbollah, punish it, eradicate the missiles and other assets that they have, but not right now. General Gavish, what's your view?
Well, probably he was looking at our show lately, because I think, at least for the first part, this is something that we are continuously saying, that when we are looking at targets that Israel, or the goals of the war with regards to the South, Israel was talking about from one part is, of course, bringing back the hostages, and the other part which was relevant to the Hamas. When we are looking today toward the south, we are very close to those two. And if we want still to have some of the hostages back, so probably This is the time to close as much as we can the south. Of course, we have to do it very carefully. Of course, there are some issues like in Philadelphia and others. But in general, I think that this is the interests of Israel. And of course, it will allow it to focus on other arenas, such as Lebanon. I would divert from what he was saying in two parts. The first thing is that I think that the main challenge of Israel is it is not Lebanon. The main challenge of Israel is Iran. So if we need to focus on something, it is first of how are we dealing with Iran. You have to remember that Lebanon and mainly the Hezbollah is one of the proxies around us, but look what is happening with the Iranians. From one side, we are there in this fight for 10 months, but they are continuing with their doctrine, with the proxies, and now they're trying also to penetrate Africa. So Iran is very consistent in its goals. One of them is to continuously surrounding Israel and influencing as the destabilizer of this region. And the other one is moving toward a weapon of mass destruction. And I think that this is the main issue. If we need to move someplace, this is over there. The Hezbollah is in the way to it. I'm not sure that we should wait for 3 years, because we have to remember that all the forces are here. The US forces are here. If something would inflect out of it, the IDF forces are here. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of reserve are here. And to start a war out of the open in 3 years from now, I think that it might be challenging. But and also for the state of Israel, something continuously. Maybe if you decided that you go to a war, it's better to finish it. I would say close to the time that we are now. But of course, we also need to exhaust all the the options, the other options, the political options, the French, the US, to allow them to try and bring something on the northern part of Israel. This is also something that needs to be done. But to summarize, what I believe is that we should close the south, but we should need strategically looking toward Iran.
General Rosen, what General Ortal has been writing, of course, comes out of his own personal experience. He's a ground forces officer. He invested many years in study and research, and apparently, up until October the 7th, was of the opinion that, yes, the Air Force, being the most powerful and prestigious branch of the IDF, is probably capable of such punitive actions against whatever enemy dare strike Israel, that Israel will have a deterrent capability. And should this deterrence fail, the Air Force, some standoff strikes, also by artillery or missiles, but mostly from the air, that this will be sufficient to fight the neighboring enemies, perhaps not those hundreds of kilometers away, but those adjacent to our borders. And now he believes that this belief was false. What's your view?
I think there are some shortfalls in the strategy that General Ortal is presenting. First, there's another side, and that is the Iranian side. Like, what will happen in the next 3 years if we just build our forces, which we won't do, of course, and I don't think that that's what he's saying, but you have to always consider the other side is also moving forward, building his capabilities. So I don't see the logic between, okay, we'll stop, we'll recoup, we'll lick our our wounds, and then we will have 3 years, and after 3 years we'll be ready. I think that is falling exactly into the trap that all of us tend to fall. Oh, the next round we will be much, much better, and then we will solve the problem once and for all. That's exactly the mistake that we keep falling into. I think the strategic way ahead needs three foundations. One is a much wider regional view. And that, of course, goes to Iran. Iran is the head. Iran and Iraq, Iraq as a landmass where Iran is moving through westward into Syria, into Lebanon, and into Jordan, if they could, is part of the problem. And we need to adopt a regional view and how we act with this regional view in mind. And another thing which we need to sort of change is, and that is the second thing, is the economic parts of how we cope and fight with a threat that is regional and strategic in nature, such as Iran. Iran has a very, very long-term goal, and it wants to achieve it. The nuclear ambitions and a regional hegemony, all these things lead to a strategy that counters it on a regional level. And if we don't think like that and just think about cutting this tentacle and then we'll beat the other tentacle, we won't win, because tentacles have this tendency to regenerate themselves. And it's so frustrating for us, right? We kill it and then we say, okay, that's it. That was the end. And guess what? After 5, 6, 3, 10 years, it comes back to us because we're not dealing with the head. So what we need is a regional view. 2 is fight exactly on their terms. And they are fighting us both on the military level, and they're fighting us an economic war as well. Blocking the Straits of Bab el-Mandab should be countered by blocking the Persian Gulf, threatening, shooting drones at the Haifa by Iraqi militias, which are Shiite Hezbollah in Iraq, should be countered by threats, covert, overt, whatever. Things will explode somewhere, somehow, by someone that has a price on Iran's weaknesses, which is its economic infrastructure, which is mostly oil and gas in Iran and in the Shiite part of Iraq, which is also part of the expansionism that Iran is trying to implement in on its borders. So all of these together lead to my conclusion that yes, in the short term, moving to the next phase on the war in Gaza, yes, it's important to de-escalate in order to be able to escalate later against the head of this octopus. And yes, we need some short-term decisions for sure, but the other, the view and the strategy needs to lie on the foundations of a regional view and economic and military, along with diplomatic and informational, but the military and economic aspects of the war against Iran have to be much, much stronger in the strategy we employ.
General Gavish, the IDF, as you yourself and General Rosen and other participants in our shows always point out, the IDF is fighting a multi-arena war, starting in Gaza, and then Lebanon and other fronts have joined the fight. In Gaza, one of the Israeli soldiers murdered on October the 7th and whose body was held captive in order to bargain for it, was recovered yesterday and returned to Israel for burial, for last honors. Over the last week, some 10 soldiers were killed in fighting in Gaza, and while this is no longer, unfortunately, major news, it does not make the headlines often. This is still a very heavy price that Israel is paying, as is the fight with Hezbollah, where many residents have been displaced. But over the last couple of days, the main focus has been on Judea and Samaria, mostly in northern Samaria, where there is a divisional operation against several terror cells and several key operatives of various terror organizations have been found and killed. The fight against these terror cells is being led by special units, of course, being fed excellent intelligence either by military intelligence or Shabak, the internal security agency, and they are supported by various infantry battalions, the Yamam special police or border guard unit, and others. The question is, in 2006, following several years where the focus was on the West Bank and seemingly quite successfully, when Hezbollah attacked Israel that July, it turned out that Israel or the IDF command has deluded itself to believe that the very training that these units get by fighting Palestinian terrorists, the fact that they are always engaged, that they cannot rest, that this will be somehow sufficient for another sort of war altogether in Lebanon, in the mountains, in the wadis, against concealed enemy troops or those trying to embed themselves in the population. How relevant is whatever is happening now, both in Samaria as well as in Gaza? Should Israel, whether now or in a couple of years, have to fight another sort of enemy in Lebanon? And if it is not totally relevant, how can a military force prepare for several scenarios at the same time? And I'll remind you, you don't need a reminder, but I'll remind you that every 3 years, conscripts come and go. You are drafting a new cohort of 18-year-olds, and then you train them, and then they are released from service. So it's a never-ending cycle.
Well, I mean, first thing first. For the first part of your question, you're right. We are dealing with today with the Hezbollah in Lebanon, with the proxies of Iran in Syria, in Iraq, from Iran itself, from the Houthis, Gaza, and of course the West Bank. And by the way, the Iranians are trying again and again to penetrate the West Bank. We are seeing it in the last few years, and even in the last few months, that they are continuously trying to penetrate this area. And as we said before, unfortunately, this is also growing because the Iranians are looking toward other countries, let's put it this way, in the region to penetrate and to influence them, and threatening Israel and the region. So this is from the one part. From the other part, this is exactly what the IDF needs to build these forces. And I think that what we understand is that looking into the future, this is a multi-directional, multi-dimensional world of fight. And you have to prepare yourself, the forces, for those, I would say, challenges. We also have to remember that one of the lessons learned is that from one hand, we have to fight against all kinds of very sophisticated challenges, but then from the other hand, we have to deal also with some challenges like the small UAVs and others. So you have to be very versatile and on your capabilities. It starts, of course, with the forces on the ground, but this is the true for all the other forces, the naval forces, the Air Force forces. You have to be first very versatile. The other thing is that you have to have on your basket the most of capabilities that you could build. It could be on the cyber world. It could be on the virtual world. It could be, of course, on all kind of different ways of fighting. But if the other thing that we have to remember that the basics are still there. An Israeli Air Force that is very versatile, and his ability is to defend Israel from the one side, but then to go and to defend Israel also far away on different regions. This is something basic that needs to being looked at also toward the future. There is no question of that. The last thing that I think should be highlighted is what we've seen in the Gaza Strip. The way of fighting of the IDF in the Gaza Strip was different from the way that it was in the past. The integration among the different branches of the IDF is a very unique way of fighting in the Gaza Strip, and I think this is a model that Israel would have to take, of course, and deal with it. And maybe the real last thing is the size, unfortunately, of our military. We understand that we thought that we could be light and small, but unfortunately, the number of recruits to the IDF needs to be much greater than it is today. There are parts in our society that should take part on it, and for your last part of the question is that still Israel, although we are serving for 3 years, the reserve is something that we continuously need to understand that this is something that will take us also into the future. And the challenge from one side that those people who are doing reserve could continue with the normal life, but also if needed and when needed, would be able to go back and do whatever they need for the defense of Israel as a reservist, and they need to keep their competence for that. And this is something that needs a different balance within the Israeli society.
Well, of course, both of you recall Lieutenant General Yigael Yadin, long deceased, but the chief of operations for the 1948 war, and immediately after that, the second chief of staff, who said that all able-bodied Israelis are really soldiers, he meant in the reserve, on an 11-month leave annually. It seems that right now it's the other way around, that some people are on an 11-month active service. And as you said, more segments of the society should take part in it. But looking at old films of prize fights, boxing, Muhammad Ali and other boxing greats, you see that when a boxer is tired, he tries to hug his opponent, tries to lean on his body in order to rest. But this is no way to get a decisive punch, a knockout, which means that Israel should now try to disengage, refresh, recuperate, and prepare for a decisive blow. Don't you think so, General Gavish?
Well, first of all, I would like to hear also my colleague here, General Rosen, because I think he has some interesting insights. So I'll be short in my answer. I think that yes, but we should also remember that we need to look regionally, as was mentioned by General Rosen, and Yaron, I give you the floor from here.
Please.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. Thank you so much.
Just for the sake of our viewers, when General Gavish says General Yarozen, he combines the Yaron and the Rosen. You are still General Yaron Rosen. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the military nickname coming up. So I think, Amir, going to your, the boxing metaphor, generally, I would say yes. I think that our viewers know very well, and we all know very well, as much as Israel is a strong and prosperous and amazing country, there's no other country in the world with the challenges that Israel has, I think, in the last 75 years. on the offense, on the defense, on the time between wars. I mean, this is highly unique. And during these highly unique 7 or 8 decades that that Israel exists since its inception in 1948, I think that when we take that and try to understand what does this mean for the future of Israel, with the challenges we have right now, this is certainly a very, very challenging moment. Israel is not built for long wars. And what we're seeing here is a long war. So definitely in the near term, Israel needs to hug its opponent in a way that allows it to breathe, because the economic burden is huge. I mean, the reservists, which are carrying most of the burden, are 1% of the Israeli population. So 1% of the population, which is also, by the way, the working class of Israel, is carrying the burden. And that has meanings for our economy and for taxes and for the government's budget and for education and for so many things we need. Israel has too many things to worry about. Therefore,
when you say 1%, you mean 100,000 out of 10 million. However, 100% of our time is over already. So I have to thank both of you, General Yaron Rosen, or Yarozen, for his buddies, General Doron Gavish. Should we call you Dogavish, or we'll leave that for another time? You don't want
exactly.
to. This has been Israel at War, an update on TV7 News Israel from Jerusalem, and we will be back with another update early next week. For the time being, Shalom from Jerusalem.
Shalom, I'm Danny Ayalon, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy foreign minister and member of Knesset. Today, I'm very privileged to be hosting TV7's Middle East Review and also being a panelist of the various shows of TV7, which I find the most enlightening, most educating if you really want to understand the world, the global scene as well as the regional scene of the Middle East. It is worthwhile to watch TV7.